Welcome to Baby Mama's Wellness Podcast, the home to holistic care and support for babies and mamas. So meet Emma Marriott, a dedicated mom of 3 with a profound love for health, wellness, and natural living. As the founder of IrisHR, a specialized HR consulting firm catering to small businesses, Emma's mission is to simplify the complexities of human resources while fostering growth, empowerment, and wellness among entrepreneurs. Based in Kitchener, Ontario, Emma enjoys time spending with her loved ones and getting outdoors. Join us as Emma shares her insights and expertise as a guest on Baby Mama's Wellness, the podcast. So welcome, Emma. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so glad that we were able to connect through the Natural Care Clinic. And when you emailed and shared your experiences with like a natural and holistic birth experiences, I definitely wanted to sit down and have a chat with you and discuss your experience.
Yeah, happy to.
How many children do you have and how different were each pregnancy?
Yeah, so I have 3. I have 3 girls, so they're age 6, 5, and 3 now. And I think, with each kind of pregnancy, they all had their own unique joys and challenges, just depending on where we were at in our lives, what we were doing. I guess kind of maybe with girls, I don't know, I didn't have a whole lot of like nausea or vomiting. It was a lot more of tiredness and low energy at the beginning. So all 3 were very much like that. I did enjoy my naps, and just kind of getting through that stage before the energy levels kind of picked back up. And yeah, so that was kind of for pregnancy wise. And I think with each pregnancy, like I said, we were at different stages. And so in the first one, we were kind of settled. We were out in Alberta. So we're originally from Ontario. And I had moved out to Alberta for work. So getting pregnant out there, it was a little bit different and challenging in the sense that I was the only one in my friend group that was pregnant. And I guess I just kind of felt isolated and alone that way. Because no one else was going through it at the same time as me. So it was a little bit different that way. And then I guess I was fortunate enough to kind of apply and get midwifery care.
Nice.
Out there. So we were lucky enough to have the 2 with that midwife. Before moving home to Ontario to have our 3rd, which I'll talk a little bit about later too. And so, I mean, birthing and pregnancy as well, like they're hugely emotional times, just, everything. Hormones are going crazy. Your body's changing. There's so many different changes. And along with, you still have to continue to work and manage your day-to-day life and your relationships and friendships and all the things. So yeah, they were all unique, and different in their own ways. And I'll share a little bit more about the actual, labor and delivery as well as we continue our conversation. But yeah, does that answer that question?
It does. I did want to actually ask you a question that I know you said that you experienced like fatigue during pregnancy. Was it like throughout your entire 9 months, or was it just like certain points? If it changed with each child?
Yeah. No, I think it was just in the beginning. Just that like tired feeling. But then yeah, after about, I would say the first 3 to 4 months, and this was all common for the 3 pregnancies. But my energy levels kind of picked back up after that. And then of course, nearing the end, and then they were all different too, because I had like 1 at home, the second one, and then 2 at home being pregnant with the 3rd. So there was a lot more kind of exhaustion near the end. And then of course you kind of start to lose sleep because you're uncomfortable and you're big. So yeah, that was the only thing that kind of circled back near the 9 months, but otherwise totally manageable. Yeah.
Okay. Nice. So did you have any initial fears with pregnancy? Did they change with like each time, or was it just like the same with each pregnancy?
That's a really interesting question. I think, I mean, short answer is yes. There was a lot of fear around, pregnancy. I think mostly there's a lot of fear around labor and delivery because that's what everybody loves to talk about and share. And at least for me, in my experience, there was a lot of negativity and traumatic stories and experiences shared that, people kind of want to share as a way of connection, but it's not always helpful on the receiving end. So yeah, I kind of found myself grappling with a lot of that
Okay.
apprehension with those
Yeah.
stories. And yes, they were great to hear, but also it's like you still have to leave and then I'm still carrying it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh gosh, that sounded awful. Like,
Yeah.
or whatever their story was. And so, yeah, and I think just from early onset, like I was really curious about and did a lot of reading and research about natural and the home birthing kind of experience. And and so I think that kind of and I mean I do also on the flip side to that, I have a fear of hospitals.
Oh no.
So that also kind of fueled the research and reading on that end. So yeah, and for me, it was just like I was in the mindset of like I really can't go to a hospital and feel, empowered and kind of like have that natural calm feeling that
Yeah.
I wanted in my childbirth. And so yeah, and yeah, having the support, from my husband, from my midwife, and just knowing that this is a safe option,
Mhm.
really helped kind of with those fears.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I think at first people thought we were crazy, like when we started sharing our plans and our thoughts and ideas with family and friends, and they were just like, oh my gosh, like,
Yeah.
what? You're going to do natural? Like, you're going to do a water birth? Like, most didn't even know that that was a thing or thought that it was, very unsafe and
Yeah.
that like my health would be in jeopardy.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was, while you're met with kind of fear and worries from others,
Mhm.
you're kind of always balancing that as you go through. Yeah.
Nice. And then would you say, because I know like as a first time mom, you don't really have the experience, whereas like when you've had like your second or third child, you kind of know
Mhm.
what to expect. Would you say that the fear was heightened in your first pregnancy, or would you say that it was roughly the same with all three?
Hmm. That's a good question. No, I think it was heightened in the first. Um, ish. So I would say my first and my third. When we'll get to the third too, because it was unexpected in a lot of ways as well. But again, a lot of the emotional side of things.
Yeah.
So I think I had a very positive, a very active first pregnancy.
Uh-huh.
And then I wasn't even really focused on the labor and delivery so much, but near the end, and then you kind of start
Yeah.
really hyper focusing on it and just making sure, you and your partner are on the same page and trying to figure things out. And, this is what I want if this happens, or if this plan doesn't work out, here's plan B,
Yeah.
things like that. Um, but yeah, I think with the first, there was definitely, I think, more fear and a harder time kind of letting go and getting into the birthing space, even though I was at home.
Okay.
Um,
Okay, nice. So why did you decide to have a natural birth, and was there any complications that arose during labor and delivery? I know you did say that you was afraid of hospitals. Was there any other reason why you decided to just have a natural birth?
Yeah, I think it was, it's a personal decision for everybody and anybody. And I think a lot of it just came out in my, our reading and research into different birthing options and then talking to our midwife about, where we were at, what we were thinking. But really for me, I found that the natural delivery kind of route aligned closely with my values and those desires for like a calmer birthing experience. And I was really into the idea of embracing the natural kind of process of childbirth and allowing my body to do what it's designed to do. And
Yeah.
I didn't want to intervene with that. The thought of even epidural, again, there's scary stories there.
And then how long were each labor and delivery?
Mm-hmm. So my first one was 16 hours. The second one was 4 hours, and the third one was 2 hours.
Oh, wow. So that's a
Yeah.
huge difference. Like such a big jump.
Yeah. 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 The third one went fast for sure.
Wow, 2 hours. That's the
Yeah.
quickest I've heard in a while. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
amazing. That's amazing for a natural
Yeah.
birth as well. That's
Yeah. It was a pretty nutso story.
yeah. Okay. And then did you have like a birth partner to like support you during your pregnancies, or did you just go alone?
No, yeah. So my husband was there for all of them. And then so for the first one, we actually had Tara was my midwife, and they worked on a team of two. And she was actually at the end of her kind of shift. I think it was like she hit her 24-hour on duty.
Yeah.
So right near the end, we had the backup come, and that was actually really great and kind of really needed for where I was at,
Okay.
as well as a midwifery student.
Hmm.
So there ended up being four people there.
Okay.
The second one was just my husband and our midwife, Tara. So same. And then the third one was actually just my husband, which we'll get into.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which I'll
Amazing.
share a little bit more.
So, um, let's actually get into it now. And what was your experience
Yeah.
with labor and delivery?
Yeah. So I think so with the first one being 16 hours, it was a lot. It was exhausting. It was it was kind of like, you're near the end of the road, and I was still so freaking ready to transfer to the hospital, and I'm walking around the house, and my husband's like getting the bag, getting the things, and
Mhm.
and then Tara's like calling back up and just saying like, "Hey, can you get over here? Like I'm at the end of my shift," and she was exhausted, and we were all kind of done. And by this point, it's like, so we had been up all night, and now it's like early morning, 7, 8, 9 in the morning. And yeah, so the new midwife kind of gets in, and she's just like this fresh ball of energy, which I totally needed. And she just kind of comes in, and she starts like yelling at me, but like in a good way, like in that like fitness coach kind of like, you got this, like this personal trainer, like we're not going to the hospital. And I was like, okay, this is great. This is exactly what I
Yeah.
needed. Um, and it was just that like extra push. And yeah, so that was wonderful. And it was kind of, back and forth between the pool, the bed, and then the couch. And so a lot of movement going on. And it was still really comfortable, like you're in your own house, which was
Hmm.
the best thing. And that's what I really wanted.
Yeah.
The challenge with the first one was we had enough water in the pool,
Yeah.
but it was keeping it warm. And so I just remember like there was always stoves, pots on the stove boiling and just being dumped, carried over and dumped into the pool. So yeah, that was pretty awesome and kind of funny in its own way. Um, and then with the second, so it was kind of started at night. And so my toddler was sleeping at the time, and then hers started at night, kind of like midnight, one-ish.
Okay.
And then that was, active labor. And I think active labor was probably shorter, but yeah, so hers again was really quick. Like Tara was there, she was by herself, and it was just so calm. Like I remember it was dark, it was nice. My husband he learned from the first one, and so he was like, I'm not boiling water again. So he ended up like MacGyvering this thing, and it was like a propane heat pump. This is not
Oh,
recommended for like the average person,
yeah.
but because he's a plumber by trade, but he was all into it, and so he kind of figured out a way to keep the hot water kind of running in and out of the pool. So that was really nice, and that was ready, and that was kind of one less thing he had to worry about.
Yeah.
Definitely wasn't on my mind. But yeah, no, it was really nice. And so I think she was born at like 5:20 in the morning, and like my daughter slept right through it. And yeah, it was relatively quick and smooth and just very calm.
Amazing.
Yeah. And then the third one was very interesting and different, and it had its own set of challenges. So when we were expecting our third, we actually moved back to Ontario.
Okay.
And so that we moved back in April 2020, and I was due December 2020. And so I guess for me, like right off the hop, it was probably kind of emotional and sad that I knew I wasn't going to have the same midwife experience that I
Mhm.
had in Alberta. But yeah, and so with the third, like I did kind of go into it with this confidence because I had done it twice,
Yeah.
and it was like, okay, this is gonna happen. Like there's no issues, there's no worries, don't need to think about anything else, don't need to, plan for hospital, whatever. And so yeah, we were feeling pretty good about that. And then the challenging thing I found with this kind of midwife setup, which I'll share a little bit again later, but it was one appointment was one person, and then the next appointment was another person. And so it always felt very like disconnected and fragmented. And it's always like trying to get up to date, and they weren't really in tune with me, I felt, and like what I was going through experiencing. And of course I had the two toddlers at home. And so that was like an added layer as well. But yeah, so moving through the pregnancy that way. And then near the end, like the last kind of couple of appointments were really challenging in the sense from the midwife was always trying, and she always felt a little bit nervous or stressed about finding a heart rate,
Okay.
and like what that looked like and what it was at. So she'd always say like, oh, I'm a little bit concerned about this, and like, what this means and all those things. And like, of course,
Yeah.
that sets off like the worry alarms, right? And so I'm sitting there and I'm thinking about it. I'm like, okay, like this has never come up in any of my pregnancies. And so that was concerning, and it kept happening. And so it was like, I think it was like the last 3 appointments. And by this point you're weekly. So it was like every week something else was kind of triggering, and worrisome. And I felt too with this, and I don't know if it's because we were back in Ontario or what the climate was, but really it was, you know, I was sharing my birth plan, and I was vocal about it. I had done it before and I was passionate about it. And every time I would say like, yeah, we're planning to do a home birth, it was just like, okay, but if it doesn't go to plan, here's what we're going to do. And so there was a lot more, it felt like it was almost already shifted to be a hospital birth.
Okay.
And it was really frustrating. And I felt like not heard at all.
Yeah.
And so it was like an emotional roller coaster near the end. And yeah, so that was really challenging. And then, so I was actually due on December 25th. And so my first one was actually on her due date. My second one was a day before.
Okay.
So I'm thinking like, it's going to be around the same time.
Okay.
And then it ended up, so I was actually a week late with my third,
Oh,
which is again, like it was uncommon, and it was just very weird. And
yeah.
so, you're just exhausted. It's my third. I'm feeling a lot more than I did with my first two. And yeah, and so on my last appointment, I think it was on December 30th. So I had a midwife appointment, and she actually ended up sending me for an ultrasound. And she wanted to check like amniotic fluid levels or whatever, and just make sure the baby was like okay for size, because then we were going to have to talk about induction.
Okay.
So I'm freaking out. I'm like, okay, we're going to do this. I'm like calling my husband, and I go to this ultrasound and I do it, and the levels are fine. And I actually ended up I remember sitting in the parking lot, and I was texting my midwife from Alberta. So I'm texting Tara this whole time, and she knows where I'm at. She knows what I'm going through. She knows everything. And she knows my history too. And she's like, I'm honestly not worried about this, like the way that, you're being cared for right now.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, this is great. And so we FaceTime, and we're just FaceTiming. I'm sitting in the parking lot. I'm like laughing, I'm crying. And she's like, okay, here's what you're going to do. And like, it was just what I needed at that time. And so we were talking about, the fast birth.
Yeah.
Because I'm just like, I feel like they already want me to be in the hospital, and I just can't do it. And she's like, yeah, okay, so here's what you're going to do. And we just kind of went over those fast birthing. She sent my husband a couple of resources for him, because she's like, you guys know what you're doing. You've done it twice. Like,
Yeah.
I'm confident in your abilities. So she sent that over. Yeah, and we had a really good chat. And I just felt like after that conversation, I literally felt like, the weight of the world was lifted off my shoulders, and it felt so good. And she was like, I want you to go get some gravel and like go home, do your, kids' bedtime routine, and just rest, like get a good sleep, and you're going to feel so much better in the morning.
Yeah.
And sure enough, I woke up in the morning, and it was like, 7 a.m. wake up, and 8 a.m. was go time, and 10:30 she was born. And it was just like all these things. But yeah, it was, and then of course, so it was so fast that we ended up calling the midwife a little bit late, because it was just so chaotic trying to get my kids out of the house and everything. But yeah, so my husband ended up delivering her.
Wow.
And so with the third one, the problem was there was not enough water in the pool, because it was too fast. So we had about like half the amount of water, and all I was thinking was like, okay, just got to get into the pool, do it. Which I did. So I was lucky enough that way. And my husband was there to catch her. And then I think it was about, a minute or two later that the midwives walked in.
Wow.
So
That's amazing.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty wild.
Yeah. So chaotic, but it was a good, smooth labor in the end, which was great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
in a way, your original midwife, Tara, was still with you because she gave you really good
Yeah.
advice.
I know. I'm like, yeah, Tara, you delivered the third one
Yeah.
too.
Okay, so my next
Yeah.
question is, what advice were you given during pregnancy? And would it be advice that you would advocate to other moms or moms to be?
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think there's so many different things, right? And it's just you got to pick and choose what's going to work for you and what you have going on. I think for me, it's still prioritizing like my own health and wellness and like mental health. So for me, I did a lot of yoga and just online YouTube. It didn't involve going somewhere. It was just all at home,
Yeah,
which was super nice. And then a lot of walks actually, which was helpful because like a lot of the times you feel, especially when, you know, the later months you're getting bigger
yeah,
and then you eat something and it's just sitting like right there. So the walks really help to kind of metabolize and stay healthy that way. They also do a lot for mental health as well. And yeah, and just kind of finding the community. I think if you can and if you're able, like find other people who are pregnant and are sharing, you know, similar struggles, and then you at least get to share kind of strategies and resources and kind of bounce ideas off each other, and grow that way. um I'm trying to think of other advice. Yeah, like don't be afraid to, you know, tell people to maybe stop, not share so much of their traumatic birth experience if you don't want to hear it.
yeah,
Because I think that's important too, right? Like we need to be able to advocate for ourselves in those situations where it's like, okay, this isn't adding value to
yeah.
my zen right now, if you will. But yeah, so it's like as hard as that is, it's knowing that, you know, you're empowered to make the decisions you want to make during that. And of course, education. So, you know, I mean, there's so much out there now too, like
Yeah.
social media, podcasts, there's so much information. So really just filtering it out for what works for you and how it's going to help you and like what's aligned with your values, I think goes a long way.
I agree. I definitely feel like a lot of the things that you've recommended are things that have been working for a lot of women, which is amazing. So like
Hmm.
walks, having the community piece, I think
Yeah.
is so big, and I think it does lack a bit. What I've noticed in Ontario, and especially after the pandemic, I just feel like a lot
Hmm.
of people are so disconnected, which is, really unfortunate.
Yeah.
I think more than ever, like not even just like being pregnant, but like once you have the baby, I think that's a whole other thing that's not really discussed, or
It's true.
like what do I
Yeah.
do with this human that I just birthed? So
It's true. Yeah.
so I think that like that's the kind of piece that I noticed just working as a naturopath is kind of missing. So I just definitely want to bridge that connect.
Hmm. Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, there's so many things as the naturopath route too, is like taking care of yourself and
Yeah,
like whatever else you need, right? All those supplements or whatever you're kind of advising your patients, but all of those things are important to take care of yourself first.
exactly. And that kind of
Hmm.
segues into my next question, which is what is your top 5 products that you use for your kids, currently
Hmm.
or during pregnancy?
Yeah, I think so. I had two that like jumped out in my mind, and I was like, "Ah, I don't know about anything else. But the I used coconut oil on my stomach a lot when I was pregnant, and like I didn't have any stretch marks, and I know that's a concern for some, but
Okay.
I started super early, like start before you need to. I think it was like 3, 4 months, like when you're still small, because then you're really kind of getting into and moisturizing the skin before it has a chance to stretch. So yeah, so I did that and I was pretty diligent about it every day, every other day. It's not pretty, but it worked for me. And then the other thing I did was kind of prepping for like the home births was, I think they call them, I want to say like padsicles. Sounds
Yeah.
super weird, but essentially like the frozen pads, right? So
Yeah.
you're putting, and I was actually making them, but you're putting like aloe vera, witch hazel, and I think green tea essential oils or lavender or
Yeah.
something, and then freezing them. And then they were there and like ready to go after birth. But yeah, that was like the most amazing thing.
That's great. because I do advise
Yeah.
like a lot of women for it, and I think like the stuff like the
Yeah.
natural products that you're putting, like witch hazel, is like a really good astringent. So basically, it just helps with like the wound
Hmm.
healing like after a natural birth. So
Yeah.
that's amazing that you did that and it worked.
Yeah. The other thing I was going to add too that just popped into my head, but pelvic floor therapy. And it was great like before and after childbirth, just to kind of help with, your hips, if you're tight, loosening everything up. So preparing for childbirth that way. And then after childbirth, it was, getting the strength back. I think was really helpful.
Yeah.
And that was I recommend that to every mom.
Amazing. I'm so grateful that you jumped on the Baby Mamas podcast and was able to share, a lot of your wisdom, your experience during labor and delivery, as well as childbirth. What kind of support do you feel is missing in the healthcare field?
Mhm. I think that's a really good question. I'll be the first one to like give feedback if something is broken or can be improved. I think is super, super important. But I think we've touched on it a lot. But that supportive community during pregnancy can go a long, long way, and typically that does evolve into post pregnancy as well.
Mhm.
But just the connections formed during these times. And so for me, my second pregnancy, our midwives actually had a program and kind of a cohort. So all of their patients kind of expecting in April, we all went through it together. And so we got a chance to meet and to share, and like I was saying, share resources, share our challenges, share those kinds of things that we were going through. And then I think too, another thing we've touched on already, but not I'm very aware that not all birth experiences are positive, and there's some, very traumatic, just heartbreaking stories. And I think that, you know, the trauma that a woman experiences in these times is that support and counseling that's needed for kind of that healing and empowerment after, I think is missing. And it's like, and then we're so focused on child, uh, you know, rearing at that point. Like you have a baby and you're at home and you're trying to figure all that out. But then you kind of let yourself, if you're focused on that instead of yourself. And I think that's when we're unable to process all of these hard things and the vulnerability that's needed during that time. And just getting ahead of those kind of trauma experiences can go a long way.
Yeah.
The last thing that I had with this too, and something that I felt was like that meaningful connection with the healthcare providers, is crucial during that birthing process. And for me, I was lucky enough to have mine at my birth. And I'm very aware, in the hospital or different settings, like sometimes your OBG can't be there. And that can be devastating for a woman, like where it's like, how do you get into that mindset of, okay, I'll be okay if it's someone else, or I
Yeah.
can, I can go through and still advocate for myself and what my birth plan is, even though it's someone else.
Mhm.
And so it's just being mindful of that. And I think the empathy and compassionate kind of approach to care can go a long way too, versus this like, okay, this very process, like you got to be in, you got to be out, we got the next pregnant person coming, like we don't have time to do this, and kind of that rush feeling, I think does a huge disservices to our moms to be.
Yeah, that's a really good point to put, because I feel like, it's such an amazing experience and it's an experience you'll always remember. And when it feels like the
Yeah.
birth team is like medicalized, and I've gone to births and I've seen like the change of midwives, and it's like a complete shift. And it's like, okay, let's just get the baby out instead of letting
Yeah.
the actual process happen. It does affect the mom. Um,
Hmm.
so it's a really great point, and I'm glad that you were able to share your experience from it as well. Thank you for tuning into Baby Mama's Wellness Podcast. I'm so excited for you to be a part of the Baby Mamas community. If you like this podcast, hit subscribe to hear more. You can also follow our Instagram page at Baby Mamas Doula, or visit our website at babymamasdoula.com.